So Boost Collaborative is, as you know, a nonprofit agency here in our community. We are entering our 48th year working under the mission of empowering people with disabilities. I work in the children's program, so we work with families who have children from birth to age 3 who have developmental delays or disabilities. We utilize a lot of our United Way funding for therapeutic services, OT, PT, speech therapy, and we also utilize some of the funding to support our Ages and Stages program, which is a developmental screening program that's available free of charge to any family in Whitman County who has a child birth to 3. In terms of numbers, I did the math just recently. In the state of Washington, the number of infants and toddlers qualifying for early intervention since 2006 has gone up 35%. In Whitman County, that same time period, we have increased 180%. So our numbers are growing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing because we know that early intervention is so important to brain development those early years. So I wanted to share a story about a little girl. I'm going to call her Sally. And I wish I'd brought more pictures. I keep this one on my desk. But she was born at 27 weeks, so she was more than 3 months premature. She weighed 2 pounds, 11 ounces. She spent 2 months in the neonatal intensive care unit in Spokane, so the family was driving up. Mom was pumping breast milk, very dedicated, 2 months. Think about it, and they have an older child at home. Because of her prematurity, she was at risk of apnea, so that whole breathing mechanism wasn't secure. You know, is she going to stop breathing and turn blue? She was at risk of cranial bleed and also retinopathy of prematurity, which is a condition where the eye has not had a chance to mature. And Darren and Susie, you could tell us more about it, I'm sure. But the wonderful thing is that by the time she was a year old, all those things were either resolved or ruled out. So the family was very conscientious about her care. They took her to ophthalmology. They made sure she had her brain scan. Everything looked great. We started seeing her when she was 2 months adjusted age to do developmental screenings. So I went out to the home. I got to meet this beautiful little girl, spend time with her and her mom and brother. She was doing wonderfully. All of her scores were right where we'd expect them developmentally. Then we screened again at 4 months. At 8 months, we started seeing a concern with gross motor. And I was telling Eric, my boss, about this. He thought, what? Why were you worried because she couldn't get her toes to her mouth? Well, if you do a Google search about babies putting their toes in their mouths, you'll see it's really an important developmental milestone. It's hard to tease out why, but that I can tell you the way I explain it to parents is, part of it is babies have to learn where their bodies are. You know, who am I? Where do I begin and end? Who are you, Mom? And finding their feet is an important developmental milestone. Also, being able to get the foot up to the mouth could have some indication of neurological development. So when she couldn't get her toes to her mouth, we called Mom. We talked to her about what they were doing. I took the information to our physical therapist, which is another way that United Way funding supports us. It enables us to do a more thorough job of developmental screening, because every time we get a kiddo, it's like, I'm not sure about this, should we be worried? I can go to one of the therapists and say, this is what we're seeing. What do you think? I'm a generalist, they're the specialists, help me out. So we gave Mom some suggestions about like putting socks with rattles on her feet, or something that would attract her attention. Well, Mom, one of the wonderful things about this family, having been so in tune to this baby, those 2 months in the NICU, Mom said, I know my baby, and I know she is food oriented, so she put baby food on the baby's toes, and within a day those toes were in that baby's mouth. So we were home free. We have continued to monitor her development, and she's doing really well. Her some of her scores are like way beyond we would expect at her age. I talked to Mom today and she said, yeah, she's running around chasing her brother. She's about to turn 2 years old and she's just doing beautifully. So United Way funds really help us really offer a more quality screening program rather than just, you know, sending a questionnaire out in the mail and getting it back. We really can follow up with families and give them more help, and just a little bit of information can make a big difference. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.